Valentina Zarya. I am an associate editor for Fortune, where I write about amazing women like the ones you just saw on the screen. And some of these women are actually here tonight, and I want to welcome them to the stage so we can give them another standing ovation. I'll start with Annie Wang from Sunval. Joanne Wilson, Valentina Ventures. Mariana Fashion Productions and There Is No Limit Foundation. Clara, Linda, and Alicia Villarosa are Villarosa Media. Suzanne West of Imaginary Energy. Thank you guys so much. You're amazing. Of course, none of this would be possible without the all-female crew of Dream Girl. Maria Perino, Director of Photography. Francesca Kustra, Assistant Camera and Assistant Editor. Victoria Aang, camera operator. And Sharon Mashiki, sound recordist. And last but not least, the ladies of Mighty Oak Animation, Jess Peterson, Emily Collins, and Michaela Olson. Thank you all. Thank you guys. Thank you. And now, in a few moments, I'll just begin a Q&A with Erin and Komal. So if you guys can just stick around for a few minutes. But I know while we're getting situated here, I know a lot of you are wondering, how do I be a part of this? How do I contribute? How do I make more of these kind of things happen? And the biggest way you can do that is actually just by telling your friends. Just tell your friends, hey, I just saw this amazing movie. I'm gonna start a business. Just hashtag DreamGirlFilm. Go on the website, tell everyone. Of course, you can also just come and you can go on the website and you can donate to Dream Girl Film. And finally, if you happen to have a movie theater or whatever it is, screen the film. You can screen the film. Obviously, not all of us have that, but. So I just wanted, before we begin this Q&A, I don't know, how many of you here are personal friends of Erin's? What about Komal? Okay, wow, okay, she has the big Indian family here tonight, right? No, and I think it's amazing that everyone came out here tonight, and I think, is everyone going to an after party as well? Yeah? Rivington Hotel rooftop? Yeah, well, anyway, I just want to welcome Komal and Erin up here.
Almost fell there. That would have been.
Yeah, you guys should try walking in a sari sometime. It's really hard. It's really hard.
Hi, everyone. Coming.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. Before we start, I just want to thank our amazing sponsors.
Who you saw on screen earlier.
Yeah, Suzanne West from Imaginea.
Who you saw up here, Suzanne, please stand. Once again.
Kristen Gracie from the RW Project.
My parents, Yadvinder and Shaminder Minhas from the Minhas Group, please stand. We have Stephanie Karlovitz from Epic Fitness in Ottawa, please stand. Steph.
We appreciate them very much.
Thank you all to our sponsors. They saw us from the moment we had tonight as just a dream. And it's been such a It's been such a journey to get to tonight, and thank you to all of you sponsors for seeing us from day one and for believing in us.
Thank you. So it's funny that you mentioned dreams. Obviously, you know, it's the title of the film. And, you know, before we launch into everything else, I just kind of want to know, like, what is your dream? Like, what is the next step after this? Like, this is part one, right, of a very big dream. What's part two for you, Erin?
I mean, we want to make a lot more movies. It was so funny because the process of creating Dream Girl and editing it, I was like so tired and so exhausted. And by the end, I was like, I don't know if I could ever do this again. And when we premiered at the White House May 26th, 2 weeks ago, and we drove home in the car with Diana, and I was like, so what are we going to do now? Like, what are we going to work on? What can I edit? Like, I was ready to go again. And so I think just knowing that we have tons of awesome documentary narrative film ideas that we want to continue to produce. So,
and specifically for Dream Girl, I mean, you saw a little bit of the beginnings of our story of distribution, but really, the seeds are planted here tonight. The 600 of you are the first people to see this film. You're the ones who we hope will carry it forward to your communities. We are self-distributing, so it's really those people who see this, they know that their community needs it, and they plan and organize events with us. So we're handing the baton off to you. We've worked and put our hearts and souls into this film for the past 2 years. And you know, just from the audience reactions, from the topics that you saw, there are things here that must be seen. So we ask all of you to just take this forward with us to help us, you know, get 1,000 screenings globally, hopefully by the end of the year, and to really take this worldwide.
So speaking of distribution, in the film we kind of saw you say, okay, we have 200 theaters wanting to screen this movie in 20 different countries. How did you do that? Like, and how do you plan to keep doing that? I'm so fascinated by your distribution strategy. Like, what's next for you?
Absolutely. So what was amazing, and we'll get into this, is I saw the Kickstarter campaign that Erin started back in August 2014.
we're our Kickstarter backers.
Yeah, Kickstarter! The handful that are here, the people who are here, helped us raise $104,000 to get this up and running and helped me find Erin. So that Kickstarter campaign that Erin started, it gave us this really great base of a couple thousand backers and supporters from day one. And those backers and supporters really have elevated this to a level. Like that 2,000 has now turned into 4,000, it's continuing to grow. And those are really the seeds of that distribution plan. It's very much from grassroots. How many communities can we get this screened in? How many local theaters? How many schools, colleges, universities, Fortune 500 companies? Twitter has signed on for 14 screenings at their global offices around the world, which is incredible. So we want to continue to do that. We want to see this on PBS or on the Oprah Winfrey Network. We want to see this kind of just going as far and wide as we possibly can. So it's really, the core of our distribution model is these community screenings and our digital sales, which will go live next year, and just kind of taking like I said, taking it worldwide.
So, I mean, right now you guys look beautiful up here and everything's perfect and amazing, but one of my favorite things that was said in the film, and I think Clara said this, was, you know, you melt down before you melt up, right? So can you just tell me, like, really quickly, one of the times that you kind of had this meltdown and then you had to melt back up again?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, something interesting that happened was we've been editing for about 6 months. And then we had a chat with our executive producers, and we thought we were done with the film. I mean, I screened it to my parents. We were like, we're ready to go. I'm getting married in a month. Like, let's wrap this thing up. And we had a conversation with them, and they were like, we are really loving the direction you're going in. But we think maybe you should think about narrowing the stories down, narrowing your characters down, and really focusing on the 5 women. And then we have the group of women that kind of support those characters. And so Komal and I thought about it, and we thought about it, and and they were right, and we really wanted to focus in on those characters and really tell more of their stories, and so we started over. And that was such a painful, and
Thank you for that. Our producer Ross is here, he made that call.
Yeah, and the film is better for it, and I mean, and we're really, really proud of it, but it was a hard decision to make, and then it was a hard decision to execute. Because we had already spent so much time and hours and blood, sweat, and tears into it, and then really needed to like pivot and start over, and that was really, really gut-wrenching.
And I want to just like do a massive shout out to Erin, because She not only directed the film and produced the film, she edited it. Every single cut that you just saw, supported like with early cuts that Francesca did for us, but every single thing up there, the motion graphics, doing like a lot of the sound editing, that was Erin. Like, this chick did that. She did. I'm in awe.
We were talking cosmically that I got set up with the best partner because my husband Sal wrote 34 original compositions.
And as a lot of you guys know, I guess my biggest meltdown moment was early March. I was actually diagnosed with cancer. And it was a very rare form of sarcoma that is classified as a skin cancer. And I just remember I went home just to get my blood work done because I have some thyroid issues, and home is Canada, and I didn't have health insurance here in the US yet. And now that I have a pre-existing condition, we'll see how that goes. So my premium is flying to Canada for every appointment. But making that call to Erin after I got out of the doctor's office, you know, she was the second person I called, and telling her I have cancer. And the melt up has been the past 3 months, and I underwent surgery a month ago, and to be up here right now and pain-free is just it's such a melt up moment. And cancer-free, to be cancer-free. So we melted down and we melted right back up on stage for you.
It's so funny too, I had an interview the other day and they were like, you know, Komal got cancer, like why didn't you push the launch back? And I was like, what?
We didn't even think about it.
What?
We didn't think it was
I was
an
like, oh,
option.
you know, we were doing. I like made some excuse up in the interview, but I was like, and then I called you and I was like, why didn't we push the launch rate back? What are we thinking? Why are we insane? But we did it. So
we're here. We did it, guys. 600 people in this room. Like, I can't even.
You guys have so much energy as founders, and actually, I'm really curious to know, you know, what was that moment where you were like, you know what, this is my baby, but I kind of want this to be our baby. Like, what was that moment for you?
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, I put Komal through the ringer a little bit, and we worked together for a long, long time, and it was, you know, small increments, and then more and more and more. I mean, she came on because she wanted to be an investor. And then she goes, you know, well, I have camera equipment. Do you want to use my equipment? And I said, do you want to come to New York and be on set? She was like, yeah. So I said, great. So she came down.
I didn't even know I was going to be in the movie. She was interviewing me for a small vignette that we were going to do as a web episode. It wasn't even like...
Yeah. And then she was like, well, I want to help more. Like, I'll do partnerships, and I'll do this, and I'll do that. And I said, okay, let's set up daily calls. And it really just evolved organically. And I think, you know, you can see Komal's passion and energy for women on screen. I was like, I want whatever that is. Like, let's bring that into Dream Girl and let's amplify it. And truly, I feel like, you know, I have so much energy and, you know, but when you combine the two of us, like, we are totally insane. And, like, you know, my dreams will start here, and then Komal will be like, well, let's do this. And then I'm like, well, let's do this. And we just keep really ping-ponging, and it's been such a fun process to be able to amplify that. And speaking of dreams, this whole event would not have happened without Komal's big dreaming, because I was like, let's do a small theater, like I want something little, like 200 people. She's like, 200 people? We're gonna need like 500, 1,000, like huge, big, and I was like, oh, I don't know, whatever you say. So this, all of this happened.
I think it's the Indian in me, right? We go big or go home.
I think it's really interesting. Also, the way you introduce yourselves, like you start off the film saying, you know, I never really thought I could be a leader, and Komal, you're like, I knew when I was born that like I'm gonna be a CEO. So like, talk to me about how, you know, like those two leadership styles work together. Like, what are the? Because I think for a lot of co-founders are kind of still trying to figure out, okay, like how do I work with another person? Do I want a co-founder? You know, how do you guys work together?
We've never been asked that question, first of all, but I think just on the spot, we just kind of bounce back and forth off each other. You know, even this week, we've had high days and low days, and my low days are her high days, and her low days are my high days, and we just really complement each other in that way. And even with workload, when I was diagnosed, Erin took on all of distribution alongside finishing the film. Like, that's no small feat. But to, respect one another, to always be, supporting one another and acknowledging what each other is bringing to the table, I think is like a core to how we continue to amplify each other's
And
work.
we're not afraid to have really uncomfortable conversations. We're not afraid to
How
like.
uncomfortable are we talking?
Like we're not afraid to fight. We're not afraid to like get mad at each other. We're not afraid to feel it out and say, okay, well, I'm uncomfortable with this. Like we need to work it out. It's really weird because when you're working with someone so closely day to day, like we can't have a day where we're mad at each other because the business will not literally go on. So if we have a problem, like we have to deal with it. We're constantly talking. We're constantly checking in. How are you feeling? How are you doing? Where's your energy?
And even if when you're being a mean person, like when you said something mean or like, oh, you're like, shit, I shouldn't have said that. Like I shouldn't have just sworn in front of my parents. But then a couple minutes later, like we come back to each other and we're like, you know what, I'm so sorry. Like this is what I was feeling in that moment. Like how do we move forward from here? So I think just getting the ego out of the way and just knowing that it's the movement that matters, not our own personal opinions or beliefs about things. It's like we just got it. We're the vessels for this train. The train's moving forward and we just got to do what we got to do to keep it going. Just keep it going, Clara.
I think it's so interesting how much you guys talk about family, but Erin, I just met your parents over there. They weren't in this movie, so can we talk about them for a little bit and kind of like you have a little vignette of you as a little girl wanting to make a film, and how did that influence your desire to do something like this?
I just feel really lucky. Well, I'd like my mother to stand up and take an applause because she.
Mary Allen! Yep.
It's true that I really didn't view myself as a leader or a CEO until I started seeing other women who looked like me, but I had the best role model growing up. She's crying already, so now I'm gonna start crying. But the awesome thing about my mother is that she drove a red convertible, wore blue mascara, wore tie-dye every day, and did not care what anyone thought of her. She was a stay-at-home mom, but the power that she has, we were in a bagel shop, and this is a true story, and she was like, this person should be doing that, and this person should be doing that, and she was like, I should just run everything. Like, she just has the efficiency to know that, and I always grew up around that energy of like, being the boss and then caring about family, and also the vulnerability that Suzanne West talks about.
Yes.
Like, you can be feminine and you can be vulnerable and you can have all that power, and that is really what my mother embodies. So I just feel really lucky to have such an amazing role model. I love you, Mom.
And I'll continue that train to the seat in front of them. My mom and dad. My dad immigrated to Canada in 1974. He always tells me that him and his friends who worked together, they slept in a small apartment, all 8 of them. They would use each other's legs as pillows. Like, sincerely. And moved to northern Alberta, which is like very, very cold, which I resent to this day. And started a logging company after working in a pulp mill for so much of his life. And from that logging company turned, a fleet. That fleet turned into, acquiring real estate. That real estate turned into acquiring hotels and car dealerships. And he just really, him and my uncle, who's not with us, he passed 6 years ago, they really built something incredible, but they were always so incredibly generous. Like, anytime someone came to the door and needed help, they would do it. Anytime, someone needed money, they would help them. They would help them immigrate to Canada. They would do, anything and everything in their power, and my mother's the same way. And I just seeing that generosity of spirit every day growing up, being immersed and seeing business as a tool for social change with, immigrant communities, underserviced, underprivileged communities, and just seeing my mom be so strong. I grew up Indian. You saw the disparity in India is so high. I went back to India after 20 years, 2 years ago, and going back to their villages and thinking, what would my life have been like if I was born in a rural village in India? And what privilege I have growing up in Grand Prairie, Alberta, that my parents gave me this life. So I'm forever indebted to them and my whole family who's here. So they just really imbued so much of this in me and that generosity of spirit.
Speaking of, generosity, I think what you, by highlighting all these women here, you kind of gave them something as well. And like, how did you find all these women, and how did you choose these 5 stories to share with us?
That's a great question. So when we did the Kickstarter, I was interviewing lots of women secretly. So I would get on the phone with them and I would try to get them to invest in the Kickstarter, but if they were CEO of a company, I was also kind of secretly taking notes about their history and trying to learn about them. And I spoke to Joanne Wilson during that Kickstarter call, and actually I met the Villarosas because one of our Kickstarter backers recommended that I check them out. And really, so I just had a span of like 50 to 100 entrepreneurs that I was meeting constantly through that process, and really just kind of cultivating my favorite stories from them. And I truly am obsessed and kind of in love with all of these women on screen, and have spent so much time with their stories and finding them, but I feel like they all bring such a unique and authentic view of what it means to be a leader, what it means to be a woman, and how to kind of build your life. And I'm so excited that they all said yes, and they all, you know, gave us their time to be in the film.
No, and like, how did you, like, you have a lot of scenes of you kind of in these rooms with like all these amazing women, and I'm kind of like, okay, how do I get there? Like, where is this place? Like,
The magical fairyland of female entrepreneurs.
you know, so
They're everywhere.
But where are they? Like, how did you find these places? Is it all meetups or like online things?
Yeah, for sure. Tons of meetups, tons of networking groups. I mean, I'm part of like 6 or 7 female entrepreneur organizations. I'm part of like a secret breakfast club that meets. I feel like if you want it online, you can find it. And so we have an amazing, amazing community here in New York City for women.
The other thing is the highest rate of female entrepreneurs in the country is in Brooklyn. So this is a great city for that. I know a lot of you guys aren't from New York, but if you aren't, join the Dream Girl Network, which is a Facebook group where we're hoping to start engaging more conversations, getting more women involved online, building this community really online, because it's just served us so much to have a sisterhood and community like this. So we hope to share the same with our audience.
I think it was Annie that said this, but she said something like, you know, we have a responsibility as female entrepreneurs to be role models for other women. So, like, what is your stance on that? Are you trying now to be, are you at the point where you're like, okay, like, I need to be a role model, like, I just got this leadership thing, and now I'm a role model already?
Well, Joanne Wilson does the Women's Entrepreneur Festival every year, and something she said in her keynote was that, like, the best thing you can do as a female entrepreneur is to be in the press and to be outworthy. Like, we need to be the role models, exactly what Annie said, that we want to be. So being out there and not being afraid to talk about it and to share your story and to be authentic, I think is really powerful. And I did an interview last week with Melina, who's a 5th grader from Westchester, who's in this room somewhere. Melina, where are you? Oh, she just left. Well, she missed her shout out. But anyway, she saw the film. She's like, I'm interested in film production. She wants to make an hour-long film. And I was like, all right. Like, that's amazing. So I think definitely sharing your story, being out there, and not being afraid to be like the face of something, because we need so many more women to be out there.
I had a moment of imposter syndrome last week. So Sam is in the room, and he invited me to speak on a panel at the Indus Entrepreneur Conference on an innovators panel. The man sitting next to me had raised $125 million for his real estate company that does an app that aggregates blah, blah, blah. And then, very impressive, but I just can't go into it right now. The man to my left had raised $136 million for his company that did geotagging of some sort that I also can't go into right now. So when I was looking at the profiles of these incredible entrepreneurs, I was like, yes, our distribution strategy is innovative. Yes, you know, this film is innovative, but what am I doing sitting in between these people? And I just had to swallow that, because if I'm not there, if I'm feeling too small to be in these places, then, like, if not me, then who? And there's no ego that I can hold on to simply from being there. And women came up to me after the panel, and men, and they were like, that was incredible to see you up there and to hear you speak and the things that you were sharing. And that's really new to me, for sure. But, you know, we need to take up as much space as we possibly can. We saw some of the discussions that were happening, the overt sexualization of women, you know, the subconscious bias that we all hold for women, even as women, when we're looking at our friends and how we want to move up and where we want to go and the kind of leaders we want to be. Hillary Clinton is our presidential nominee for the Democratic Party. That happened this week. And we are still too busy talking about her $12,000 Armani jacket than like really focusing on the fact that we have a female presidential nominee for the first time in 200 years. So let's check that subconscious bias and take up as much room as we possibly can unapologetically and leave the rest of that at the door. I got into that. Taking up space.
I actually love, like, one of my favorite parts of the movie is when it's like, Komal networks her way onto Ken. I was like, whoa. How did you, is there a story behind that? Can you share that?
Yeah, absolutely. So very briefly, the Coles notes of it. I actually went to the Sundance Film Festival on a whim last January, like knew not a soul, had one contact who was premiering a film. The team from Misrepresentation, they were premiering The Mask You Live In, which is about masculinity and us discussing like what it means to be masculine. And I was flying into Sundance. My flight got delayed in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I didn't know a soul. I missed the premiere for the film I was trying to go see. So I rented a minivan. I went to Sundance in Park City, Utah. Stayed with this wonderful Mormon family. Met Baus that night, and his film, How to Change the World, was opening the Sundance Film Festival. And I was sitting there. I had a handwritten producer on my badge. And he's like, "Oh, so you're a producer?" And I'm like, "Yep." I didn't even know what that meant at that point. And he was like, and I was like, "Yeah, and our film's we'll be at Sundance next year." And here he is, 20 years of experience, and he's like, "It's taken me 20 years to get my film here. I like this chick." So then we hit it off. We got to talking. At Sundance is when I met someone who worked with HP and wanted to do this Women in Film panel at Con as well. So then they invited me to come along for the Women in Film panel. So it just is like showing up, going out there, being audacious, and just kind of showing
producer on your bed.
Writing producer on your bed.
Yeah, I mean, you're literally living, you know, Clara's words when she's just like, you know, you're gonna be scared, but you're just gonna have to do this. Can you talk to me about that moment, like, in the beginning of the film where you were like, you know what, peace out, like, I don't want to do this job anymore. Like, what was that really, like for you to just throw that fear out the window?
Just from being sexually harassed, really. And being a pretty loud and outgoing person started changing my personality. I started modifying my behavior and feeling like I couldn't really be myself. And once I started to feel like I had to change and I was seeing myself go through that, I was like, I need to remove myself from that situation. So yeah, I just didn't want to be there anymore.
And then you started your blog, Feminist Wednesday, and did that kind of bring you back to how you felt like before you started modifying your behavior, or?
Well, I started Feminist Wednesday as a result of the sexual harassment, and I kind of came into my own feminist experience through that, and I was like, and I felt really selfish as like this white privileged woman that it took me this long to find feminism because it had to like really affect me in this deep way. And so I started Feminist Wednesday as like a little act of rebellion. So I was like, well, if I can't like have a voice in this like white man, old man culture, then I'm gonna put a big purple beaver on this blog and I'm gonna showcase everybody's stories. And so it really gave me kind of the confidence to learn more about women's stories, to not feel alone, I think was the biggest thing, and to feel seen, you know, to know that it wasn't my fault because I decided to wear a dress that, you know, I was going to be treated differently, or because I had blonde hair that, you know, I was going to be talked down to. And so I think finding my tribe and finding that community was really strengthening for me and led me to then find female entrepreneurs and be pursuing this crazy dream.
It was a crazy dream. And I'm wondering, like, what advice would you have for women that, you know, are in that corporate job right now and kind of are feeling like, oh, like, I don't know, I'm like really uncomfortable here, but I'm just here, like, what do you wish someone had told you at that moment, you know, when you had that experience?
Well, you don't need permission to follow your dreams. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that I feel like we're always waiting for the perfect job or the perfect man or the perfect somebody to like open that door for us. And Mariama said it, you need to break that door. And you don't need permission. We're absolutely kind of waiting for that thing, and we can be that thing. We can move forward in that way.
A woman actually asked me this question. She works in finance, and she just was very, very in a space where she was just surrounded by men constantly and not really able to showcase that vulnerability in that industry. And she came to me and she said, I feel like I'm missing a part of my soul by working in finance and not working towards a social mission. And I have this idea for a social enterprise, and I really want to pursue it. And I told her, it doesn't have to be one or the other. I know so many people who have leveraged their finance jobs or corporate jobs and done the side hustle and really built that side hustle into a meaningful company. And when they're ready to exit, they kind of take that step to the side. So I think it doesn't have to be one or the other. Really also be strategic with how you want to do your exit. Be thoughtful about what it means to your larger life. I mean, diving into entrepreneurship, I mean, just from hearing our stories, it's a struggle. There's a lot to it, and you really have to think about it. And it's not about just being your own boss. It's about, being willing to embody the vulnerability, authenticity, hardships, and joys like tonight for us that come with it. But just being thoughtful, strategic, taking your time, and not being hard on yourself along the way.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought this up, because there actually are a lot of entrepreneurs here, and I think, in the film you kind of touch on the fact that you had to raise around, after the Kickstarter. Can you talk to us a little bit more about how you did that, and besides the really great moments, like what else went into that? What was the work you put in?
Well, I mean, we really just got super lucky because Joanne Wilson was in the film, and we had an awesome time working with her, and she was great on set, and she really enjoyed being in the all-female crew. I mean, we could probably just ask her this question of why she invested in us, but I basically just called her and was like, we need funding, can we talk about it? What would we do? What would this look like? And then she just took a meeting with me, and we showed her our business plan. We showed her the revenue that we wanted to generate, and she was just all in and super nice. And I was so terrified during that meeting, and after that little reenactment, I went into a park and I sobbed hysterically. I was eating ice cream, so I was shoving ice cream in my mouth, and I was sobbing on the phone.
And I was supposed to be there for that meeting, but Customs stopped me at the border.
Calling Komal, crying hysterically. She helped us raise $100,000 to finish the film.
And to add to that, the Kickstarter funding, the angel investment, and then how did we get through the past 8 months of business? It's really hard to be seen when you haven't made that mark yet. So, Joanne saw us before we were even a film. So many of the women in this room saw us before, just from our trailer last year, but we didn't have a product until 3 weeks ago. We didn't have a movie until 3 weeks ago. So when we were pitching investors or pitching partners, we've been on endless calls and rejection after rejection after rejection. To get through the past 8 months, it's been friends and family investment. And I'm very grateful to my parents for helping us get to this point, making it through really what was the hardest and most challenging few months of this whole process, and getting us here. So, you just have to keep asking, source from the people you know. Don't feel like it has to be, the investor that everyone's writing about. The person that, in your own house might want to help invest in your idea.
And don't wait until you're out of money to raise money. Yeah. That is because that's what we keep doing, and that's not working. You need to be at a space where you're feeling abundant, you're feeling great, and you don't need it, and then you're attracting it when you're oh my God, look at the bank account, we got a call. Then it's a feverishness, and that's not good either. So really take your time.
So thanks to our Dream 10 who supported us when we were in our little feverish state.
Yes, thank you. We love you.
Guys, I think we have a question from Twitter, right?
Well, my question from Twitter is actually, how would you describe the mission of Dreamgirl in 140 characters or less? Now, we're not going to actually test you, but if you had a tweetable mission statement for Dreamgirl the film and Dreamgirl the movement, what would it be?
I have to go first? Okay. To enable more women to better understand the power of their role within the global economy, and to leverage that power through their consumer spending and through the roles that they have in their work. This is not short. to really make an impact and understand that they are in control both of their financial lives and of greater global impact that can be made through the economy. So very brief.
Not 140
I'm thinking about the numbers, but you have to dream it first. It has to start somewhere totally intangible, and somewhere in your mind, and somewhere in your soul, and somewhere in your being. And then you have to allow the space to exist, and then walk towards it. And it doesn't even need to be something you can tell your mother about it, or you can take the first step, or you just need to inch towards it, because it's always going to start somewhere that nobody had, that you can't touch. Could have never told you 2 years ago that we would all be sitting in this room together. I was terrified. I remember getting my wedding fitting. Somebody asked me what I did for a living, and I was so embarrassed to say that I was directing a movie because I was like, I don't have a movie. I don't have a co-founder. I didn't have funding. So but you just have to kind of move forward really slowly, really carefully, really thoughtfully, and allow that dream to take up as much space as possible. That's not 140.
From the intangible to the incredible. Hashtag Dreamgirl Film.
Thank you so much for everyone for coming.
Yes. We are running a little bit over time, but we just want to say from the bottom of our hearts, thank you to everyone who's in this room, who's willing to see us, who's willing to see the women on this screen, and who's willing to help us take this movement forward. Without you, we're not going to be able to do it. So take this as my call to action for you. Reach out to us, screenings@dreamgirlfilm.com, and let's make this a greater global movement.
Thank you.
And see you all at the after party. Maybe you can help us. Grab that Uber or that Lyft or the subway. We don't know what traffic's like right now.